Welcome to the BEI podcast. I'm Lutricia. You know, there's been a lot of talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Instead, we're going to focus on BEI, bigotry, exclusion, and ignorance. Our country has been plagued with it since it was founded. Qualified citizens are denied leadership, silenced, labeled incompetent, all because of who they are or what they look like. We ask, what does it mean to be qualified, and who decides? How do we determine who gets to participate in the American experiment? Can we live up to the principles of our democracy, liberty, and justice for all? So I'm happy to have this conversation with you today, Crystal. I mean, our work together on the communities that we serve on and your commitment to social justice and your own life story is something that I wanted to explore on this podcast with you. And I wanted to, we were hearing a lot about, what we're talking about here on this podcast, bigotry, exclusion, and ignorance. And I know a lot of that has sort of landed in the transgender community. And so I wanted to just get a picture and understanding from you and your experience and your journey through your own transition, what this current period feels like for you and how you all are dealing with, or how we all are managing this whole sort of DEI hysteria that's going around that's affecting a lot of us. So tell me about you and your community and what you see is going on right now.
Okay, sure. Well, let's start off with I'm 60. I'll be 65 years old in August of this year. So I was born in 1960, and I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I grew up just outside of Greensboro in Guilford County. My maternal grandfather, my mom's dad, had a small farm. We lived on the farm, and my maternal grandparents were really, I would say, good people. Unusually, my grandfather during the 60s and 70s, he had black people at his house, which was very, very unusual in our community, a farming community. I mean, there were KKK members in our community, and I knew he had black friends, so they were very wonderful. He was very good with me, but my dad's family was all dysfunctional. They were from mill worker community. My grandfather, I think, my dad was bipolar, and I suspect. So my dad he was abusive. He was racist. My family members on my dad's side were extremely racist. So I grew up with this weird, you know,
Yeah,
good
mixed.
and bad, black and
Yeah,
white. But then I also knew from a very early age, I can remember being 4 years old and seeing girls and thinking, I should be one of them. I feel like a girl. By the time I started school, I was very quickly labeled. I was an only child, so I wasn't around other kids, so I was just acting the way I act. And the first parent teacher conference, my teacher told my parents that I hung around the girls too much. I was too sensitive, and they need to fix that. And I got a beating for that from my dad for not being a man. And so I learned right away. Okay, and by then I'm already going in my mom's closet. I'm experimenting with clothes. I mean, I'm having dreams at night that I'm a female and waking up to be disappointed. So I knew solidly, but I didn't know what it was. The '60s. There's no internet. By the time I'm
and
middle,
and there was nobody actually grooming you. You weren't like going out
no,
and people like they
no,
tend to say now that there are people,
exactly.
teaching kids. There,
Yeah.
that was
No,
not your
it is
experience.
my brain. I lived on a dirt road in the country with no other kids. There's no drag. I didn't know what a drag queen was, and I actually thought I was probably the only person in the world that must feel like this because it is so weird. Because there was no visibility of the community either. Unless you were in the gay community, New York City, you would see folks in gay bar, but I wasn't in that environment, so it just was there.
Yeah,
And I know that from talking to my trans brothers and sisters, everyone, most of us say the same thing. We knew as soon as I had consciousness, I knew. And so nobody groomed it. By the time I heard about the word then was transsexuals, people getting sex changes, I knew 100% that's me. And this was probably about 12 years old. But I made a commitment. I thought I can never do that because I was already seeing how society treated even gay people. And the beauty, the one good thing that came out of this, I think it gave me a different lens than most other white people, Southern white people in particular, because I was much more sensitive. I know my friends, they integrated the schools when I was in the second grade. And I remember this kid in my school, the parents would not let him get in the car to go on a class trip because he was black. And he was crying by the side of the school. And my mom was the one parent that went over there and let him. And we were already full, but got him in our car. And I remember being so moved by that. And the other white kids just seemed to not, it didn't even faze them. They didn't even notice. And I
Hmm.
think I noticed because I knew that if they knew about me, I would have been sitting over there crying with them because those parents wouldn't have accepted me either.
So you knew, you kind of had the sense early on, Crystal, that there was some sort of attitude or perceptions that were apparent in your community that would have
Yes,
made you the other as well as people of color
absolutely.
the other, that kind of,
Yeah,
you knew about bigotry kind of early on.
early on because I'm listening to, I know who I am. And, by the time I'm in middle school, I mean, this is what goes on in the boys' locker room. They're calling each other queer, which was not a good thing back then. We didn't know nor, you know, the F word, and I bet you're gay. And it was, I mean, it was in everything. It was even the teachers, the high school coaches. That's how they motivated the boys. Say, what's wrong with you? Are you queer? You push it hard. Damn, you throw like a girl. And so I was very aware of bigotry. And so then I noticed the other groups. And living as a white male, appearing that way, I'm hearing they feel safe saying things around me. So I hear the hatred of all the groups. My group,
You're hearing the N word, the
yeah, oh yeah, all of it.
every yeah.
Jokes about black people, jokes about in that day Polish jokes were popular. It's the gay and lesbian and trans, and I have an awareness. Even you know, even black folks aren't hearing they're hearing it. But by the 70s, some people are getting, well, you can't say that in school, so they're not. But when they think they're in a safe place, they're saying it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this continued, on into my adulthood. I didn't even think I was going to college because we were poor, didn't have the money. And it was actually a black lady, an African American, the only one of only three staff members at my high school. She was our guidance counselor. And she told me how I could go to A&T on a minority presence grant. They had a grant to encourage integration. A black kid going to a white school could get money, or a white kid. And so she changed my life. This is a lady who grew up in Jim Crow era like you and had no reason to help some little white, what appeared boy, but she did. She had a heart. And so that was the second thing. I went to A&T, and all my white friends are like, "Oh my God, they're gonna, you're gonna get killed. You're gonna get stabbed." And it's that the irrational fear we've talked about that white people
Hmm.
have. And I'm like, I don't think so. These are college students. My goodness. And I wasn't. I was embraced, and it soon became apparent to me that I was more accepted in that black community than a black kid would have been at Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill at that time, or because I saw that I had friends at these other schools, and people of color at those other schools were really kind of off to themselves. They were loners.
So it's an interesting thought about who is excluded and who's included, which groups
Yeah.
include and welcome and which groups exclude
Yes.
and separate themselves from people, which is what I see a lot in white communities more than I see in people of color communities.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I think being marginalized to the extent they are people of color, they understand, you want just like me, right from the beginning have more sensitivity to someone else being marginalized because I knew that I would be as well. And and if you're born black, you're marginalized from day one. So
Right. Yeah.
you feel empathy for anyone else who is in that situation. I think those communities are just generally more welcoming, and they don't require you to matriculate. You don't have to adopt their culture.
Right. Right.
They're just friendly. They're good people.
So the other experience then you had, which is, and I was just wondering about this as I listened to you, who in your community actually welcomed you? Who in your community saw you and said, "We welcome you even as you're taking this journey and are dealing with these realities in your life"?
Yeah. So when I didn't come out until 2023, and I shocked everyone around me. And the it was I was embraced better than I thought. But some of the things would surprise you. I would say of my white friends, the ones on a lower socioeconomic scale. I have one good friend up in Greensboro. He didn't go to college. He stayed in that small community, farming community, and we just kind of assume, well, he's kind of redneck, he's gonna this is and he and his family were the first to just embrace me. Whereas some of my other ones who are more, say, at an executive, living more of a bourgeois life in the country club, they were a little less
A little
because
less
they're more
welcome.
embedded in that dominant culture, and that it brings me to something else I've noticed in the white community. That's it's so ironic, even what's going on currently. The current administration gets a lot of votes from that
They
segment of our
do.
community, and if that community would just stop and analyze, they're no better off. It's like during the 60s, my dad's family, they were racist, but they were all extremely poor mill workers. They weren't much better off than the black folks. And they should have been on the side of some,
Right.
but
Yeah.
they're easily manipulated by these powerful white people, and they buy in.
So I'm curious, what do you think that's about though? Because that's been, when I was doing civil rights work and we were trying to build these
Yeah,
coalitions and these partnerships and these allies, we saw that the low income, poor white community, we saw a natural ally there because we were having the same economic struggles
right, exactly.
and the same economic challenges. And we had a really hard time making those coalitions and allies, and they did not want to join with us. And I'm curious, from your point of view, what do you think that's about? I mean, is it that they are so internalized in their whiteness and their white superiority that they can't give that up? But I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want,
No,
sort of your honest
it,
take on it.
yeah, it's baffling to me to this day, and that's your explanation is probably the only thing I can. And I mean, because right now, I mean, the folks that voted in that, and I mean, most of the people in that they're supporters. I'm thinking, why are you supporting this? He's cutting programs that hurt you, and these folks, they represent the one percenters. They don't represent you at all, and but yet they're still just hardcore. And I meet some of these folks. I was at a party once and I met a guy who was one of these Trump supporters. And he said, "You're the first transgender person I've ever met." And I said, "Well, good." And then ask me any question because I would rather them know instead of hear the BS they get from Fox News. And he's asking me, "Well, what about the sex changes they're doing in the schools without the parents?" I'm like, "Really? You believe that? Have you think about who's funding that? Who's paying for it?" Because it's expensive.
Did you ask him those questions, and what did he?
I did, and he just kind of looks at me dumbfounded, and he goes, "Huh? Well, I hadn't really thought of that." And I said, just you need to when your leadership is telling you things, they lie. Look into things for yourself, educate yourself, and we ended on a friendly note. But I don't know that I really won him over. But that's something I try to do in my life in the circles I move in is try to educate people and I want to bring them in. I don't want to turn into them another, and just hate them back. I want to change them. but it
Hmm.
is so, so ingrained. It is so challenging.
See,
And
I worry, and this is a concern I have, is that any kind of we did a program on chaos as part of this
mhm,
podcast, and Naira Hill, who is a really skilled professional clinician, was talking about the function of chaos, how it's disruptive and
yeah,
nothing is as we have known it to be, and everything is changing.
yeah,
And I think for many people that support Trump, they're having the experience of chaos.
yes,
It's
yeah,
like nothing that they knew is the same.
yeah,
We're looking at women and the roles of women differently. We're looking at the roles of people of color and their standing in this society differently. We're
yeah,
looking at gay and lesbian people differently than we used to, and
yeah,
certainly trans communities. And so I would, when I try to step into that space and try to understand, what's happening from their point of view, it feels like the equivalent of chaos, like stepping onto another planet.
yeah.
You have no rules or understanding about how to operate or function within that new environment.
Right. That's right. Right. I was just thinking back to a little bit earlier when we were saying, well, why are they so ingrained? I think another dynamic that plays in this is I know a lot of the Eastern religions and shamanistic religions of indigenous people and people in Africa, they do ceremony to suppress the ego because it's male ego, quite frankly, that causes a lot of it. And so white men use that ego. They want power and they want control. And so to be a good person requires more empathy. And so pushing the ego down makes you more empathetic. And I think some of it is if even when you're down at the low and if I'm some struggling mill worker white person, having another group that says, yeah, but I'm better than them, it boosts that ego. It's
Right,
what Hitler did in Germany. He turns he finds the Jews, and they're the cause of all our problems. And he tells the German people, all of you, you're better, you are superior. A lot of Germans would say later after, and I have German roots, so I feel it's
right.
okay for
Yeah,
me. 50% of my mom's family, not they immigrated early, but you look back at those films, a lot of those people say, well, in the Nazi regime, you had to conform, you had to. I couldn't come out, but you watch those films; those people are joyful, doing their
yeah,
high heel.
yeah,
Everyone. And when I worked in a grocery store once, I remember there was a lady in our grocery store who grew up as a child in Germany, Berlin during the war, and telling you should tell stories how horrible it was. But when they ran that series about the Holocaust, there was a big TV series in the '80s on that.
yeah.
We were talking about it at work, and we said, "Have you watched?" She goes, "No, it's just a bunch of lies about the German people. It didn't happen that way." And wow, and that is the kind of thing we're seeing now. People are just so brainwashed. They refuse to look at the truth, and
But
I don't know if they get
don't
a
you, don't,
boost because I'm
yeah,
part of
don't
this
you?
elite group.
It's Yeah, but it's kind of hard, don't you think? I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a white person
Yeah,
who gets to look back at their own history, and unless you are brain dead, you cannot help but notice the horror
I know.
that one group of people visited on another group of people. So
Yes,
now, if I'm in the group of people that are responsible for the horror, and by the way, the horror is continuing, and we're still having
yes,
people being
yep,
shot by the police, we're
yeah,
still having the kind of, violations at the voting polls,
right.
we're still having that kind of abuse. And I know that my people are responsible for it. How
Hmm.
do I pull my sense of self, my ego? What do I do with that? Now I got some choices. I guess one choice is I could kind of acknowledge it and commit myself to doing something different.
Yeah,
The other though is I could just act like it didn't happen and people are lying, and frame this kind of mental model that says, these folks are just blaming us for stuff we didn't do. And I didn't do it. I mean, I'm just thinking about, how do you deal with that as a white person who is trying to find their own dignity and their own
Yeah,
humanity?
yeah. Well, for myself, even though I would say I had I had more sensitivity and I was aware, and I, I cried too that day that kid was crying. I thought, well, wow, why are those parents being so mean? But at the same time, I will say, when I first started out in my career, or when I did get into college and go to A&T, I'm having to work 30 hours a week. I'm barely making it to get through school, and it was a struggle. And I started getting this kind of feeling like, well, wait a minute, I didn't own slaves. I wasn't here. I'm poor too. I'm having to work my way. But at the end of the day, when I show up for a job interview, I still have white skin, and it opened a door for me. Whereas my cohorts at A&T didn't have that. I graduated in '83. I sent out resumes, and I was getting very little response because they don't know. They assume I'm an engineer. I don't think I covered that. So my
Right.
world was very only white males worked in the firms at the time. There were no cis women. Women were secretaries or admin assistants. No women professionals. No people of color, and certainly no one openly gay, lesbian, transsexual. But I soon realized that even as poor and everything, and I struggle, there's still doors that are automatically opened. I mean, my experience today, there's similarities to being trans as to being black in America.
Hmm.
My son is married to a mixed race young lady, and her black aunt, one day said, be careful. Driving while trans is almost as bad as driving while black.
Yes.
I said, yeah, you're right, almost, but the difference is pretty huge because when I get pulled by a policeman, and I got pulled by a state trooper one night. I thought, is he going to hassle me a little bit because he's going to be some, super male ego conservative guy? I'm stereotyping him too. But what I'm worried about is he might harass me or something. When he goes up to a car and I'm black, he's already got that irrational fear and he's already more trigger happy. I'm probably not going to get shot. But
Hmm.
so it's still, I have to keep that awareness that it's even now. I mean, that they're attacking our community and doing hard. They're making laws. It's going to make it hard for me. But I'm not worried that someone's going to come yank me out of my bed at night and murder me like Emmett Till.
Right.
It's still. I live this experience. And it's so hard right now, but it's made me even more empathetic to the people of
Hmm.
color. And God help the trans women of color. I mean,
I was gonna say they're having a hard, they're catching it.
it is horrible for them. I mean, it already was. When we have Transgender Day of Remembrance and we remember those whose lives were taken in the past year, it's overwhelmingly trans women. And that doesn't mean trans men also get some of the bigotry, but it seems to be trans women, that they really just can't stand us. And if you're of color, you just don't have a chance in this world, Harley. Is horrible right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, the current, I mean, it's almost like the intentional sort
Yeah,
of targeting this group of folks and making them responsible for everything that's probably gone wrong in this country is
right.
just, that seems to be where it's headed here.
And I, again, going back to earlier, I don't understand why other people, but it baffles me because we, all things aside, whether you think this is real or it's mental illness, the bottom line is we're 1% of the population.
Right.
We can't be screwing things up. We can't have a
Right.
big impact. We're nothing. We're little, and to hear them talk, we're just bringing down America. We're destroying it.
Well, I go where you go with that slander about, you know, grooming kids to be transgender, which I think is just a
It's
slander. And but somehow or other, people heard that and believed it. I
They
mean, just
do.
accepted it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had an African American friend of mine who is no longer, that I don't talk to anymore, because we were talking and I just never had any idea that this conversation would go the way it went. But
yes.
we were talking about the election, and it was actually a day or two after the election, and she said, "Well, I voted for Trump." And I choked. I mean, I could not speak. And
Wow.
I asked
Wow.
her, I mean, what in the world? And she said, "Well, I couldn't support Kamala was going to be, these transgender rules and these bathrooms." I mean,
Ugh.
she just
Yeah,
believed the
yeah.
whole thing. And
Yeah.
I just could not understand. This is not a stupid woman.
No, yeah,
This
yeah,
is not a stupid woman, but
yeah,
she bought that. And the thing that was the most appalling, I said, "You believe that over the reality that
yeah.
the Trump administration will pass laws that will literally endanger the health of your 20-year-old daughter,
Yep, yeah.
that will control her right to be pregnant and when and how to be safe. You
Absolutely.
chose that over this reality that we know is going to happen and is happening."
Yes.
I do not to this day understand it.
But, I think that's ultimately maybe that is their game. If you pick a community that's a very small community and
Yes.
you can demonize them, then the rest of your voters can get on board to hate that community because they think it doesn't affect them and they can
You,
ignore the negative impact to themselves.
yeah, you pick the community that can't fight back and you
Right.
make them wrong,
Yes.
and you sort of, deflect everybody's attention to look at this group of people and what they're doing, and all the other crazy stuff that you're doing kind of gets swept
Yes.
under the rug or people ignore for some reason. Yeah.
Right. And that is another interesting dynamic between, well, for example, in the Trump Vance, I mean, brown skinned men voted, Latino men
Yes,
voted
they
for them,
did.
and look where that's got them. You better hope you don't get a knock on your door because you'll be in a Guatemalan prison the next week.
Yeah.
But they got on board. But I do know in the Latin community, the leading countries where violence against transgender folks is in Latin America. It's in
Yeah.
South America, and my wife, we're splitting up, but she was half Dominican, and I know within her family too, they're very anti-LGBTQ. So by picking us as a scapegoat, he's able to get that community on board. And
Yeah, but
like,
I think, and I'm going to ask you this, but I think we as human beings are built to automatically fear that which we don't know,
yes, yeah,
that for
right,
which we are not, of which
right,
we are not familiar.
yeah,
There's that automatic sort of, "I'm going to pull back here because I really don't know what this person is or what this is about. I'm just going to play it
right,
cautious," probably out of a sort of natural need to keep yourself safe.
absolutely, yeah,
And I think what Trump has done masterfully is exploit that. It's
yep,
exploit that natural fear of what we don't know
right,
and turn it into something ugly
yes.
and make that something that is known that is not true.
Yeah, exactly. That he's pushed the fear so high that everyone's saying that I don't like all these other things about him, but if we don't elect him, this group of people that are just out to destroy, to get my kids, they're going to recruit my kids and try,
Yes.
or go further back. If we don't do this and get these conservative people in power, the black people are going to rise up and they're going to, I remember that in the '60s, you used to hear white people say that the blacks are taking over, like they're worried. Well, maybe they should.
Although that has never been the black community's solution to that.
No, no, it is
We've
not.
been primarily nonviolent, but right, I can hear that logic. But
Yeah.
underneath that, then what I think what we're kind of coming to is that there's a significant group of people that are just afraid.
Yes.
They're just literally they are afraid of what they don't know, what doesn't
Yeah.
look like them. They're afraid of what they're going to lose.
Yeah.
There's this sense that the world works for them and they've got all these privileges, and now they're going to lose it, and these people of color and all of these people with different lifestyles are going to take over, and
Yes,
they're going to kind of be erased. I mean, that's my
exactly.
sense of it.
And I think one way to fight back, I think we do need to work more with all of us marginalized communities coming together more. They also try to keep us separate because if we get together, we've got power now.
Right,
And
right.
I was happy to. I work with a transgender advocacy group in Alamance County in Burlington, North Carolina, and we've had two young Latino gay men join our group. They're not transgender, but they heard about us, and they're fighting for the Latino community and for the gay community,
Yeah,
that's what they said. We need to work together, and so one of them is one of our board members now, and we need to do that with the African American community too. And
yeah. Because my sadness is my, yeah, I gotta say, disappointment
yeah,
is that the Black community has not sufficiently supported gay and lesbian causes in the way that I think we should.
yeah,
And I know it's because we believe that the Bible,
yeah,
black people as a rule tend to be pretty religious group, and so the Bible says it's an abomination and all of
yep,
that. They go with
right,
that. And
yeah,
and my thinking is, growing up as a civil rights activist and growing up in the Jim Crow
yeah,
South, I just asked myself, how in the world could you ever, I don't care, how could you ever support the mistreatment of a group of people given what we have been through? And
right.
so we really got to do some work
We do, yeah,
in the people of color community. Although I think I'm seeing more in the people of color that I work with and talking to, and more just a general average person, that there is now more tolerance than there used to be.
there is, yeah,
There's a deeper understanding, because I actually think that the other thing that happened was that people of color, particularly black people, bought the notion that, this is a behavior that people choose. This is
yes,
not a behavior that is born to them naturally, that is
right,
just their way of being. This is a behavior that you intentionally choose. And
yes,
I think as they understand more that that is not true, there's more acceptance and connection to the struggles of these communities. It's almost like we have black skin.
right,
We did
right.
not pick it.
Yeah, you
It
can't
was
make that
not our
argument.
intent, and people feel some kind of way about it.
Yeah,
It causes us trouble. Then
right,
guess what? That is also true in the gay
yes,
and lesbian community.
right,
And I
right.
think once black people begin to understand that, their eyes are a little softer when it comes to looking at people around this issue.
Yeah, I agree. I encountered this, gosh, about probably 20 years ago. I was on the board at another church. It was a United Church of Christ, which is a
Hmm.
very progressive religion.
Yes.
And about half of the churches, a third at least, are UCC churches or black churches. It's they were evangelical Reformed and Congregational Christian combined to form UCC. So a lot of the churches in Eastern North Carolina, UCC, are predominantly black churches. And UCC Church was one of the first denominations to become open and accepting to all LGBTQ folks.
Hmm.
But within our UCC churches in Eastern North Carolina, the ones who were black churches, they were not. They were teaching, they were still having sermons. I mean, they were saying it's vile and disgusting, it's sinful. And we were struggling with that because, we were actually meeting with some of these ministers, and it's an awkward situation because you feel as a white person, it's who's empathetic to the African American cause, wow, am I even in the right place to criticize these folks? But at the same time, I was like, hey, you're doing what people have done to you.
That's right.
Yeah, and it was quite a dilemma in our church. And we were hearing these things where some of the white folks in our community, we had a lot of gay and lesbian folks in our congregation because we were open and accepting, and they were like, what? I marched in the civil rights movement. I was
Yeah.
out there with them. Now
Right.
where are you for me?
Right.
But it's hard to criticize them because then it looks like, well, I'm another white person, telling black people how they need to do things.
Yeah, but I think a little truth telling, because it really is about their belief that
It's a choice.
homosexual behavior, transgender behavior is intentional.
Yes.
And, the teaching then becomes, this is not intentional. And we
Yeah.
can demonstrate
That's
it
right.
scientifically. We can show you this. And
Yes.
then the question becomes, if it's not intentional, these people are not choosing this, like we did not choose to be black
Right.
in that sense. Now, what is your response
Right.
to the oppression that they're experiencing? Because
Yes.
it is just like the ones, almost very similar to the ones we're experiencing.
Yes. Yeah.
And that becomes the challenge, for to and I agree with you that bringing people together around the issue of bigotry, exclusion, and ignorance
Yeah.
is where we need to land here.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to, you talk about DEI, we need to be eliminating the BEI
DEI.
from our lives, which would lead us to come together. And one of the things that the right has done, I don't think we on the progressive side we're paying a lot of attention to, but they've been intentional in breaking us up
Hmm.
more than we've been intentional about coming together.
Amen. Yeah.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
they've been more intentional about that than we've been intentional about
And they've
coming
been
together and
successful.
understanding. And they've been incredibly successful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right now we're floundering, trying to find our community and trying to find those connections, because we are naturally on this side an empathetic community.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
We are an empathetic
Yeah.
community. We do deal in compassion,
Yes. Yeah.
but I don't think we've done as good a job as, I think we took certain things for granted and didn't work on our relationships with each other.
Hmm.
And now we need each other
Yeah. We
because
do.
it's happening to all of us,
Yes.
and we need each other. And so that work, my next question to you was going to be, if you could change one thing
Hmm.
about what's happening right now in the world, if you could replace it with something else, what would the thing be that you would change?
Boy. I don't. It's if there was a way. Again, it's you've used that term in what the way Black African Americans are treated, irrational fear, and it's ultimately comes down to they generate this. If we had a better some way to, it's educate people. It's ignorance too.
Right.
It's like you say. It's we can let them know it's not a choice. I was born with this. I mean, would you if there's just some way to the news medias are just so biased on both sides, and
Right.
so people don't trust them. And it, or they lock into something. It's just some way to educate folks outside of what the politicians are saying, and bring this and say, look, you're being lied to. These aren't one thing. I'm hopeful for my own community. There's some new research now. Some of the stronger MRIs are actually showing differences in the brains of transgender women versus cis men. And there's an area below the hypothalamus where gender identity lies, and it's about half the size in a female as it is in a male. But if you transgender women have the smaller one, like a male. So, in my view, I consider myself somewhat intersex. I have a woman's brain,
Yes.
and a lot of my counterparts, we also have. I've never had hair on my chest. I have narrow shoulders. That's why my transition went so well, because I
Right.
just needed a little push.
Right.
And
Yeah.
my estrogen level before transition was 1 unit below female. So,
Wow.
and that will go such a long way if science can just put it to bed that no, this is not a choice. This is how we are born. And then all of us groups can accept each other.
Or we can, at least we can begin to work on what the fear of each other is about,
Yes. Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
will always, even if I know that this is, you being a normal, natural human being, but if I've been taught that there's something about that I should be afraid of,
Yeah.
that's where it gets to be really challenging. So
Yeah.
the notion of creating spaces where people can come and have this experience of each other
Yes. Yeah.
without judgment and without blame, without criticism? And is there a way that we can sort of work through our fear in each other's
Yeah.
presence? Because I mean, like I said, I think there's a natural tendency to be cautious about that which is different
That's yes.
and how I allow that
Yeah.
into my life. I think there's a natural tendency,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's our most mature tendency. I think
Right.
our most mature tendency is to lean into each other, our
Yeah.
collective humanity, discern that which is the most like us in the
Right.
ways in which we are most alike than in the ways in which we're most different, because we know in our mature mind that we need each other,
Yes. Yeah.
And so the notion that, to me, the big work right now, and it's interesting because I'm wondering if you're seeing this. Are you seeing more people reaching out to each other and coming out and reaching out and wanting to be more connected?
Yeah, I am. So I mentioned how the Latino men came to our trans meeting here at my office. I'm a co-chair of our employee resource group for lesbian, gay, bisexual,
You're
transgender.
still working as an engineer?
I am. Yes,
Uh-huh.
I'm here
Okay.
at my office right now, and I'm an ally in our African American employee resource group. And the co-chair, the chair of that, she's also in this office, young black woman. We work very closely. Our two groups have really bonded. We've come together because we realize we're both in this. What's going on affects our two groups. So we're co-sponsoring speaker events for African American speakers to come in on DEI, and I tried to get a transgender speaker lined up, but my company did wimp out a little on that one. They were saying, well, we do military work. This was a military person who just got fired.
Right.
It's a little too sensitive. We need to, but we are, at least here I'm seeing that, and I'm starting to see that some others, and that's what would really, we need it to happen. We've got to
Right.
start reaching across and make an effort to do it.
Right. Does your company have a DEI policy?
We do, and we are not changing that. Thankfully, we do a lot of federal work, and concerns have been raised about that we could lose our work. But our CEO, he talked to me himself, and he said, despite what's going on, we are not changing our policy. But to give you an example of how bad it is, our official name is Dewberry Engineers Incorporated. So our acronym is DEI. And so we were recently involved in, the contracting officer on a military project we had made a comment, and he said, I want to do something on our contract here. Several points in this document, it just used the shortened version. It says DEI, and he says, this is not the way I think, but what's going on now at other levels, they're scanning documents. And if they see the word DEI in a contract, it raises red flags like, well, wait a minute. We don't want to give federal contracts to this group because they're, he said, can we just spell it out every time so that
Wow.
that is how bad they are. I mean, they are on a mission to eliminate it. Yeah. I don't know if they say that, but we're having to change wording in contracts and things on our federal contracts. And the one thing that's hopeful is generally the people we work with, they don't support any of this. I mean, they're kind of in the same boat. They're federal workers. They could be fired if their
Right.
program gets, and but they're having to play the game. They just have everyone so scared.
And that's probably the sad. I mean, we're all exhausted.
Yeah,
We're disappointed. We're concerned about ourselves, and we're concerned about our neighbors and people around us.
yeah,
And we've got 3+ years to go.
yep. I know. It's
You know, it's one of those things where,
yeah,
the notion that somebody said this, a documentary I was watching, said the only answer to this is we the people. It's the kind
amen.
of thing that you talk
Yeah,
about.
yep,
The people, once we decide we're not going to do this, and a critical mass of people say
yeah,
no, then it will not happen. But I don't know that we have that critical mass yet. I don't
I
know if
know.
we have
Yeah.
the people who are going to really be willing to stand up and put and risk something and put some skin in the game
Yeah.
and go,
Yeah.
no, I'm just not going to stand for this. And I think building that critical mass of community people, a critical mass of lovers, people who care,
Right. Right.
is probably where the next effort needs to be.
I think it is, yeah. And eliminate, you bring up a lot of times the irrational fear and fear. And I think the thing about fear, and maybe I think that is why they use it. I think fear is harder to change than opinions.
Yes,
It's so deeply
yes.
rooted. Myself, I have a fear of snakes. I mean, I see a snake, a black snake got in my house last year, and I know they're harmless, but I had a near encounter with snake bite when I was a kid, and I was shaking, I was sweating, and the same year I had an encounter with a bear out running, and it didn't generate that reaction. So, so, you know, even when I'm educated and I
Right,
know there is still that fear is just deeply rooted, and I think that's what they play on. But fear is the best because it's easier to change an opinion than it is fear.
right. But
Yeah,
and that brings me to the other thing, because if we acknowledge that fear is a factor, a big factor in this, then we also understand that demonizing and labeling folks won't get us there. Somehow or other,
right.
we've got to create
Yeah,
the space
that's
where
right.
we can have the conversations without labeling and judging and criticizing
Yes.
folks. And
Yeah.
that's the work on our part.
Yeah, I
We got
agree.
to do that.
And it's hard. I mean, that is
It
how
is
I,
hard. That's
yeah,
the hard work.
I work with my community, and they're mad and they're angry, and a lot of my community says no. I want to go out there, and yell and shout back, and I'm like, but that won't change things.
Right.
I was talking with someone the other day, and I said, when someone says something about I sit there and I stay calm and I have a conversation with them, and they're like, how do you do that without just getting? I was like, I have to do that because that's the only way I'll ever be able to bring them to my side is to sit and talk and commune with them. As hard as that might be. I mean, that's what Martin Luther King did.
That's right.
Yeah, and just show on my side, I will show you nothing but love to
And
the point that
respect.
made in respect, and maybe your fear will come down, and then you'll start to see me as a person.
And
And
as somebody who used to work in the civil rights movement, I can tell you firsthand that meeting somebody's anger and their meanness with respect really can neutralize the
it
conflict
does
situation.
absolutely.
It really can. If you're not fighting back and you're not equally angry, then this person has to deal with their behavior, not yours.
Yes.
And
And
that's critical.
right. And when other people see that, just seeing that will bring them around.
That's right.
Like you're not the demon anymore. I mean, when Martin Luther King and his group went across that bridge and policemen are beating them with sticks and they're laying curled up in a fetal position, even racist whites, I think, if they had any soul at all, couldn't look at that and say, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that was his role in the civil rights. He was able to bring public opinion and start swinging it and saying,
And actually,
yeah,
to bring people back to their humanity. You're
yes,
right. You cannot be a human being and watch a kid get beat because all he wants to do is sit at a lunch counter.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it brings you back. It brings us
yeah,
back to our humanity.
yeah, amen.
So you know what? Thank you, Crystal, for this
Yeah,
conversation. Really
thank you.
appreciated it, and we're gonna do this again with you because you have a lot to say about this. But I really appreciate your taking the time out to be with us today.
Absolutely. It
So
is a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate all you are doing.
thank you.
Glad to be your friend.
Me too. Glad to meet you and know you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for joining our podcast. Please visit our website, everybodyasourOwn.org, and join our monthly HEAR and Now conversations. If you appreciate this content, please like and subscribe to us. It is deeply appreciated. See you next time.